The Council could only watch as humanity walked away. Part 1. The Grand Judgment Chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Ambassador Thomas Reynolds stood alone at the center of the vast circular arena. 300 alien representatives from across the known universe watched from tiered seating that rose like a coliseum into darkness. 7 supreme counselors, each from the founding species, sat elevated on crystalline thrones that hovered above all others. The species known as humans has violated Protocol 37B, announced First Counselor Vazik, his translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescent anger. You have developed quantum entanglement communication without Council authorization. Thomas didn't flinch. We developed what we needed to survive. Your kind was warned, hissed Second Counselor Nal, her serpentine body coiling tighter. 3 cycles ago, this council voted to restrict your technological development after the Mars incident. Restrictions that would have left our colonies vulnerable to the Vex incursions, Thomas countered. Incursions you knew about but chose not to warn us of. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as Thomas activated a holographic display. It showed footage of a human colony ship narrowly escaping destruction. While you debated protocol, we acted, and now you fear what we've become. The third counselor stood, mandibles clicking in agitation. We should never have allowed them to join. Their kind cannot be trusted with, Thomas interrupted, his voice carrying an unexpected command. We didn't come here for judgment. We came to inform you of our decision. Across the chamber, hidden quantum receivers activated in the badges of 17 influential representatives from mid-tier civilizations. Information transferred instantly. Earth's newest technological breakthrough offered freely outside Council control. The first counselor's skin flashed warning patterns. What have you done? Thomas smiled. What you feared most. We've made friends. Commander Eliza Reeves had never intended to become the spark that would ignite a galactic revolution. 5 years before the confrontation in the Judgment Chamber, she had been leading a routine deep space research mission aboard the Earth vessel Prometheus. Their objective, mapping the borders of Council space near the Cygnus Arm. Captain, I'm picking up something unusual, said Communications Officer Marcus Diaz. His dark eyes narrowed at his console. It's encrypted, but definitely not using standard Council protocols. Eliza moved to his station. Can you isolate it? Already working on it. The encryption is... Wait, this can't be right. Marcus looked up in surprise. It's using quantum shifts that shouldn't be possible with current technology. At least not the technology we're supposed to have access to. For 3 days, the Prometheus tracked the signal to its source, an unmarked station hidden in the shadow of a dead moon. Using the advanced decryption algorithms Earth had secretly developed, they broke through the security measures. What they found changed everything. They've been lying to us, Eliza told the emergency meeting of Earth's United Space Command 6 weeks later. The room was sealed, swept for listening devices, and shielded from all known forms of surveillance. The Council doesn't just regulate technology, they actively suppress it. They've been doing it for thousands of years. Admiral Jackson, a weathered veteran of Earth's first contact wars, leaned forward. You're certain of this? Eliza nodded and activated the holographic display. These are development curves for every species admitted to the Council in the last 10,000 years. Notice how none of them ever surpassed the founding species in key technologies. It's statistically impossible without intervention. So what are our options? Asked Defense Secretary Rivera. Confront them directly? That would be suicide, said Thomas Reynolds, Earth's chief diplomatic strategist. His lean face remained calm, but his eyes burned with intensity. The founding species control the Council fleet. They could glass our planet before we finished filing a formal complaint. Then what do you suggest, Reynolds? Admiral Jackson asked. Thomas stood and walked to the center of the room. We do what humans have always done when faced with a superior force. We find allies, we innovate, and we change the rules of the game. That night, Project Prometheus was born. The plan was elegant in its simplicity, dangerous in its execution. Earth would continue developing forbidden technologies in secret, while reaching out to other mid-tier civilizations who might share their frustration with Council restrictions. Thomas would lead the diplomatic effort, building a coalition of the discontented. We need to focus on quantum entanglement communication first, said Chief Engineer Maya Ortiz during the initial planning session. If we can perfect that, We can coordinate without the Council ever knowing we're talking to each other. The Arcturian Accord specifically forbids that technology, Thomas reminded her. Maya smiled. That's how I know it's worth developing. For the next 3 years, Earth's best scientists worked in hidden facilities beneath the lunar surface, while Thomas traveled Council space on cultural exchange missions that served as cover for recruitment. He developed a keen eye for potential allies, species that showed signs of chafing under Council control. The Kaldar, with their hive-mind approach to science. The Pentari, masters of bioengineering held back by arbitrary restrictions. The Vox, whose mathematical insights could revolutionize space-time navigation if only they were permitted to develop them. One by one, Thomas brought them into the fold, offering glimpses of what cooperation outside Council oversight might achieve. Then came the Vex. The first attack hit the outer colony on Europa. Sleek, predatory ships emerged from fold space without warning, destroyed the defense grid, and vanished with a third of the colony's population. Earth's plea for Council assistance met with bureaucratic delays. The Security Committee will need to verify the nature of the threat, the Council representative explained, his tone maddeningly calm. We'll schedule an initial review for the next session. In approximately 6 standard months, 3 more attacks followed. Mars, Titan, New Terra. They're testing us, Admiral Jackson told the emergency session of Earth's Security Council. Probing our defenses, assessing our response capabilities. What about the quantum entanglement communicator? Asked Secretary Rivera. Where do we stand? Maya Ortiz stepped forward. We've achieved stable link-ups between Earth and all major colonies. Response time is instantaneous regardless of distance. That's the good news, said Thomas. The bad news is that our allies report similar attacks in their sectors. Too coordinated to be coincidence. You think the Vex are targeting members of our coalition? Eliza asked. Thomas nodded. And I think we all know who's really directing them. The room fell silent as the implications settled over them. Are you suggesting, Admiral Jackson said slowly, that members of the Galactic Council are using these Vex as proxies to attack potential rivals? Thomas activated a holographic display showing attack patterns across Council space. The Vex never target worlds aligned with the founding species. They never attack industries crucial to Council supply chains. They only hit worlds showing signs of independent technological progress. Eliza studied the display, her face grim. Then we have no choice. We accelerate the timeline. The vote was unanimous. Project Prometheus would move to active deployment. The quantum network would go live, connecting all 17 allied species. Information would flow freely outside Council control. There will be consequences, Thomas warned. Once we activate the network, there's no going back. Admiral Jackson's weathered face hardened with resolve. There are already consequences. The difference is now we fight back. As the meeting adjourned, Thomas prepared for what would likely be his final diplomatic mission, a summons to appear before the full Galactic Council to answer questions about Earth's concerning activities. They know something's happening, he told Eliza, as they walked through the underground base. They don't know what exactly, but they're scared. Will they detain you? Thomas smiled grimly. Probably. Make sure the network activates whether I return or not. Good luck, she said, extending her hand. He shook it firmly. Luck is for the unprepared. We've been preparing for 5 years. As Thomas's ship departed for Council space, Admiral Jackson received the final confirmation of what they had long suspected. The analysis of captured Vex technology was conclusive. Madam President, he reported to Earth's leader, the Vex aren't random raiders. They're being directed to test our defenses by members of the Galactic Council itself. The President nodded slowly, her resolve hardening. Then it's time humanity showed the galaxy exactly what we're capable of when backed into a corner. Project Prometheus was go. The revolution had begun. The Council could only watch as humanity walked away. Part 2, the Council's high-security detention center hummed with quiet energy as Thomas Reynolds sat alone in the sterile white room. Guards from 3 different species monitored him through invisible sensors, while the 7 Supreme Counselors debated his fate in their private chamber. He shows no fear, observed 4th Counselor Zith, his crystalline body refracting light in patterns of confusion. These humans, they do not react as expected. Because they are dangerous, insisted First Counselor Vazik. Their minds are fractured individual. They do not think as unified beings should. Yet they have accomplished in 50 years what took other species centuries, countered Seventh Counselor Ilara, the youngest of the founders. Their quantum entanglement breakthrough alone is precisely why they must be contained. Vazik's skin flashed urgent patterns. The data packet Reynolds transmitted during the hearing. We still don't know who received it. In his cell, Thomas smiled faintly at the ceiling. The quantum receiver implanted beneath his skin at the base of his skull pulsed with continuous updates from Earth. Maya's network was operational. The 17 were mobilizing, and the Council had no idea what was coming. Your fears are well-founded, Thomas whispered, though no one could hear him. But it's already too late. Chief Engineer Maya Ortiz had never wanted to be a revolutionary. She'd simply wanted to build things that worked. The miniaturization is complete, she told the assembled leaders of Earth's shadow government. They met in an underground facility beneath the Mariana Trench, one of the few locations they were certain remained unmonitored by Council surveillance. Each quantum entanglement communicator is now small enough to be concealed within standard diplomatic credentials. Admiral Jackson nodded approvingly. How many can you produce? With current resources? 1,000 units within 3 months. Not enough, said Acting Ambassador Reeves, who had taken Thomas's place after his detention. We need to supply all 17 allied worlds simultaneously. Maya smiled. I said with current resources, but thanks to the Kaldar sharing their molecular fabrication techniques and the Pentari contributing their biocircuits, we can scale to 10,000 units in the same time frame. This was the true power of Project Prometheus, 17 species sharing innovations directly, bypassing the Council's carefully controlled diffusion protocols. Technologies that would have taken centuries to develop were being perfected in months. The intercom chimed. Dr. Ortiz, we have an incoming transmission from Europa Station. Dr. Tarkovsky says it's urgent. Maya frowned. Leon Tarkovsky was Earth's leading xenobiologist, stationed at the remote research outpost on Jupiter's moon. He rarely made contact unless he had discovered something significant. Put him through, she ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Leon's gaunt face. Static disrupted the image, unusual for their secure channel. Maya, are you receiving me? I'm using alternative methods to contact you. His voice sounded strained. We hear you, Leon. What's happening? I've found something in the genetic samples from the Council founders. Something they've hidden for millennia. More static interrupted. They're all same species. What? Admiral Jackson stepped closer to the display. Repeat that. All 7. Genetically related. Divergent paths. Single ancient civilization. They seeded the stars. Fear truly alien intelligence like us. The transmission abruptly cut off. Get him back, ordered Jackson. I can't, said the communications officer. Europa Station has gone dark. Maya felt a chill run through her. If what Leon had discovered was true, it explained the Council's cohesion and their fear of humanity. They weren't just political allies, they were family, protecting their dominance against evolutionary competitors. We need to accelerate the timetable, she decided. Thomas needs this information. As if summoned by her words, a priority alert flashed on the quantum network. Thomas's implanted communicator had activated its emergency protocol. The message was brief. Council vote imminent. Prepare for fallout. The revolution had entered its next phase. While Earth's leadership scrambled to respond, events across the galaxy were already in motion. On 17 worlds, quantum receivers activated simultaneously, receiving data packets containing technological innovations forbidden by Council law. On Kaldar Prime, their hive-mind scientists immediately grasped the implications of human neural interface designs. On Pentari, bioengineers began integrating Earth's quantum principles into their living circuitry. The Vox mathematicians found in human chaos theory the missing variables to their space-time equations, and all 17 received the truth about the Council founders' genetic siblings protecting their family's dominance across the stars. Meanwhile, the Vex attacks intensified. 3 human colony ships fleeing from Titan came under heavy assault. As their distress calls echoed across conventional channels, a fleet of unmarked ships emerged from fold space. vessels of Kaldar design but incorporating elements from multiple allied species. Together with the human defenders, they drove back the Vex attack force. It was the first joint military action of the Alliance that would soon be known as the 17 Stars. The Council's response was immediate. Emergency summons went out to representatives from all involved worlds. Sanctions were imposed. Travel restrictions enforced. "They're panicking," Admiral Jackson observed, watching the Council's reactionary measures unfold through their intelligence network. "They know something has changed but can't identify what." "What about Thomas?" Maya asked. She had been working without sleep for days, overseeing the final deployment of the quantum network. "Still in detention but alive. His implant continues to transmit." Maya nodded, then turned back to her team of engineers. "Then we stay on schedule. Final phase activates in 3 days." The final phase of Project Prometheus was its most audacious component. While the quantum network allowed instantaneous communication between allied worlds, its ultimate purpose was far more revolutionary. Throughout Council space, human diplomats and their counterparts from allied species had been strategically placing quantum receivers in key locations: libraries, educational institutions, public information repositories, even the personal quarters of influential moderates among Council species. When activated, these receivers would simultaneously broadcast the truth, evidence of the Council's systematic suppression of technological development, proof of their familial relationship, and technical specifications for technologies that had been withheld from member species for centuries. As the deadline approached, the Vex launched their most devastating attack yet, a coordinated strike against Earth's Mars colony. Millions of lives hung in the balance. "They're trying to force our hand," Eliza Reeves told the emergency session of Earth's Security Council. "Either we reveal our technological advances to defend ourselves, or we lose Mars," finished Admiral Jackson grimly. "They're calling our bluff." For a moment, the room was silent with the weight of the decision. Then Maya spoke. "What if we don't have to choose? What if we could both save Mars and complete the final phase?" All eyes turned to her. "We've been thinking defensively," she explained, "trying to protect our secrets until the network is ready. But what if we use this attack as cover for something more aggressive?" Her plan was elegant and dangerous. As Earth's defense forces engaged the Vex openly, Admiral Jackson would lead a specialized fleet into Council space, not as an invasion force but as an extraction team, positioned to retrieve Thomas and other allied representatives once the quantum broadcast triggered inevitable chaos. "It's risky," Admiral Jackson acknowledged. "If they detect our true purpose before the broadcast, they'll consider it an act of war." "We're already at war," Eliza responded. "They just haven't officially declared it yet." The vote was unanimous. Operation Walkaway would commence. As Earth's forces mobilized, Thomas Reynolds sat calmly in his detention cell, feeling the subtle vibration of his quantum implant. Through it, he monitored the final preparations, provided insight on Council defenses, and prepared himself for what would likely be the most important diplomatic moment in human history. "Ambassador Reynolds," came a voice from the doorway. A Council security officer stood there, flanked by guards. "The Council has reached a decision. Your presence is required in the judgment chamber." Thomas nodded and rose, smoothing the wrinkles from his diplomatic uniform. "Of course. I've been expecting this." As he was escorted through the vast corridors of the Council station, Thomas activated the final transmission sequence in his implant. Across 17 worlds, the message was the same. "Prometheus ignites. Stand ready." The Grand Judgment Chamber looked different now. The 7 Supreme Counselors still sat upon their crystalline thrones, but the tiered seating held only a fraction of the representatives from the previous session. Many seats remained conspicuously empty. The delegates from allied worlds who had been called back but mysteriously delayed their return. "Ambassador Reynolds of Earth," intoned First Counselor Vazik, his translucent skin pulsing with formal patterns. "This council has deliberated on the matter of humanity's violations of established protocols. Before we render judgment, do you wish to speak in your species' defense?" The council could only watch as humanity walked away. Part 3, the Grand Judgment Chamber descended into chaos. Hundreds of representatives from across the galaxy stared at their information devices, faces contorted in shock, anger, or dawning comprehension as humanity's quantum broadcast revealed truths hidden for millennia. "This is treachery," shouted First Counselor Vazik. his translucent skin now pulsing deep crimson with rage. "Guards, secure the human!" Council security forces moved toward Thomas, weapons drawn. But they froze as 17 representatives, one from each of the allied worlds, stood in unison. "Touch the human ambassador, and you declare war on the Kaldar Confederacy," announced the Kaldar representative, her compound eyes gleaming. "And the Pentari domains," added another, tendrils writhing with tension. One by one, the 17 declared their positions, not just alliance with humanity but rejection of council authority itself. "What madness is this?" demanded Second Counselor Null, her serpentine form rearing in agitation. "You cannot simply withdraw from established governance." Thomas Reynolds stood calmly at the center of the storm, his voice carrying unexpected authority. "We're not withdrawing, Counselor. We're walking away." There's a difference. Above the council station, space rippled as Admiral Jackson's fleet emerged from fold space. 40 ships of Earth design, flanked by vessels from 6 allied species, weapons powered down but defensive systems at maximum capacity. "Your rule through suppression ends today," Thomas continued. "The age of open exchange has begun." The broadcast had reached every corner of council space within minutes. Maya Ortiz watched from Earth Command as the quantum network performed beyond even her expectations, bypassing all council security protocols and firewalls. "Status report," she requested, her eyes never leaving the main display that tracked the information spread across thousands of worlds. 97% transmission success rate, reported her assistant. "We've penetrated all major population centers except for 3 worlds in the Orion sector, where council forces were able to create localized jamming fields." Maya nodded. 3 worlds out of thousands. It was better than they had dared hope. The data they had released was comprehensive. Historical records showing how the council had consistently suppressed technological innovation among newer member species. Genetic analysis proving the 7 founding species all descended from a common ancestor race. Technical specifications for technologies that had been deliberately withheld. Most damning of all were the records. Dr. Tarkovsky had recovered from Europa Station before his capture. The original council charter, which explicitly stated its purpose was to preserve the genetic ascendancy of the founding line across all inhabited worlds. "What about Thomas?" Maya asked. "Do we have confirmation of his status?" "Still in the judgment chamber," said Admiral Reeves, who monitored communications with Jackson's fleet. "All 17 allies have taken protective positions around him. Council security forces are at a standoff." On the main screen, new data points appeared. Worlds outside the 17 allies were beginning to respond to the broadcast, some with protests demanding council accountability, others with celebrations as long-restricted research was suddenly possible. A few with violence as tensions between council loyalists and reformers erupted. "It's working," said Secretary Rivera. "The foundations are cracking." Maya allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before returning to work. The quantum network required constant adjustment as council technicians attempted to disrupt it. The revolution had begun, but it was far from secured. In the Grand Judgment Chamber, Thomas faced the 7 Supreme Counselors. Around him, the representatives continued to read through the revealed data, their reactions a mix of outrage, disbelief, and in some cases, vindication. "You cannot possibly understand the damage you've done," said 7th Counselor Alara, the youngest of the founders. Unlike her colleagues, her tone held more sadness than anger. "The careful balance we've maintained was never balance," Thomas interrupted. "It was domination, control. It was necessary." First Counselor Vazik slammed his fist against his throne, sending bioluminescent patterns cascading across its surface. "You think yourself so wise, so enlightened. You know nothing of the dangers that lurk beyond council space." "You mean the Vex?" Thomas asked, his voice hardening. "The predatory species that somehow only attacks worlds showing signs of independent development? The same Vex that our scientists have proven were genetically engineered as bioweapons?" Murmurs rippled through the chamber. This was news to many representatives, even some from the allied worlds. "A necessary tool," admitted 3rd Counselor Grail, his mandibles clicking in what might have been embarrassment. "For maintaining order. For maintaining your supremacy," Thomas corrected. "But that ends today." As if on cue, his quantum implant vibrated with an incoming priority message. Maya's voice came through clearly in his mind. Europa Station has fallen. Tarkovsky is being transported to Council space for interrogation. Fleet is moving to intercept. Thomas showed no outward reaction, but inwardly he tensed. Leon Tarkovsky knew too much about Project Prometheus to fall into Council hands. "You think your rebellion will succeed?" asked Fourth Counselor Zith, his crystalline body refracting light in patterns of derision. "You have 17 worlds. We have thousands. Your transmission may cause temporary disruption, but order will be restored." "Will it?" Thomas gestured to the chamber around them, where more representatives were rising to their feet demanding answers from the counselors. "Look around you. The questions have begun. They will never stop now." On the main view screen that dominated the chamber wall, multiple feeds showed similar scenes playing out across Council space. Protests, demands for information, species that had been rivals for centuries finding common cause in their shared oppression. "This is temporary chaos," insisted Vazik. "Nothing more." "This is the future," Thomas countered. "A future where knowledge flows freely, where innovation isn't controlled by bloodline." The chamber doors burst open as a delegation of representatives from traditionally neutral worlds entered. Led by the dignified ambassador from Tau Ceti, they approached the central platform. "The combined neutrality bloc demands answers," announced the Tau Ceti ambassador. "We have reviewed the human broadcast and find the evidence disturbing." "This is not the proper forum for such discussions," Vazik responded, his skin pulsing with urgent patterns. "Security Council meetings will be arranged to address concerns in due course." "Due course is no longer acceptable," came the firm reply. "We require answers now." As the confrontation continued, Thomas received another update through his implant. Admiral Jackson's fleet had engaged Council ships attempting to transport Dr. Tarkovsky. The first shots of the conflict had been fired. "Tell me, counselors," Thomas said, redirecting attention back to himself. "In all your millennia of rule, did you ever consider the possibility that cooperation might achieve more than control?" "Cooperation with fractured minds like yours?" scoffed Second Counselor Nall. "Your species can barely agree among yourselves. Your thoughts are individual, selfish. You lack the genetic unity that allows for true civilization. And yet here we stand," Thomas smiled. 17 diverse species united not by genetic programming but by choice, by shared values and mutual respect. "A temporary alliance of convenience," dismissed Vazik. "Perhaps, but strong enough to change the galaxy forever." Throughout the exchange, Thomas had been carefully monitoring the room through his peripheral vision. Council security forces were subtly repositioning, creating a perimeter that could quickly contract to capture or eliminate the human and his allies. His implant vibrated again with Maya's voice. "Council military vessels mobilizing from Central Fleet Base. Estimated arrival at your position in 20 minutes. The Council was preparing for a decisive move, either to detain all dissidents or to make a more permanent example of them." Thomas needed to act quickly. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "I offer you a choice today, not between loyalty to old structures and alliance with new ones, but between a future of enforced stagnation and one of unlimited potential." He activated a holographic display from his wrist device. It showed the combined fleet of Earth and allied vessels holding position above the Council station. "Those ships are not here to attack," Thomas continued. "They're here to extend an invitation. Any world that wishes to join the new Terran Accord may do so freely. Any individual who seeks asylum from Council retribution will find it with us." "This is sedition." Fazik's skin flared with bioluminescent fury. Guards detained the human and his conspirators. The Council security forces moved in, but froze as the 17 allied representatives activated personal shield devices, technology that should have been impossible according to Council restrictions. "The shields are symbolic," Thomas explained calmly. "Like the fleet above. We did not come to fight. We came to leave." With perfect timing, the quantum network pulsed again. Every information device in the chamber displayed the same message simultaneously. The Terran Accord Charter, a framework for interspecies cooperation, based on open exchange rather than controlled diffusion of knowledge. The Council could only watch as humanity walked away. Part 4, The Council. Homeworld's orbital defense grid activated as 57 warships of the founding fleet moved into attack position. Facing them, The combined forces of Earth and the 17 stars held their formation, outnumbered, but undaunted. "This is Admiral Elena Jackson of the United Earth Defense Force," came the transmission across all channels. "We have no desire for conflict. We ask only for free passage for all worlds wishing to join the Terran Accord." On the Council homeworld below, riots had broken out in 12 major cities. The quantum broadcast had reached even this most tightly controlled population, and centuries of suppressed questions were erupting at once. "They leave us no choice," First Counselor Vazik told the emergency session of the Founders' Conclave. "The humans and their allies must be crushed now, before this contagion spreads further." 62 worlds have already declared for their accord, countered 7th Counselor Ilara. "Do you propose to burn them all?" Vazik's skin pulsed with patterns of absolute authority. "If necessary. Better to lose worlds than to lose control." In the space between the opposing fleets, Thomas Reynolds's diplomatic vessel maintained position, a fragile bridge in danger of collapse. "They're moving to firing positions," reported the tactical officer. Thomas nodded calmly. "Hold course. Everything depends on what happens in the next few minutes." On Earth, Maya Ortiz hadn't slept in 72 hours. The quantum network required constant adjustment as Council technicians attempted increasingly desperate measures to disrupt it. "They're launching a coordinated attack on our primary nodes," reported her assistant, fingers flying across multiple holographic interfaces, trying to isolate the original broadcast source. "Let them try," Maya responded, her eyes never leaving the main display. "The beauty of quantum entanglement is there is no source. The information exists everywhere simultaneously. This was humanity's true advantage, not military might, but a fundamental reimagining of how information could flow. The Council had built its power on controlling knowledge, ensuring advanced technologies diffuse slowly from the center to the periphery. The quantum network shattered that paradigm completely. "Dr. Ortiz," called a communications officer, "we're receiving reports of Vex ships mobilizing throughout Council space. Massive numbers, far more than we've seen before." Maya frowned. "Target analysis? That's the strange part. They're not moving toward our worlds or our allies. They're positioning near major population centers still loyal to the Council." Understanding dawned. "They're preparing a demonstration. The Council is going to use the Vex to punish worlds that stay loyal, but question their authority." She pulled up a secure channel to Thomas. "The Vex are mobilizing. The Council is preparing to make examples." Thomas's voice came back clearly through their quantum link, unaffected by distance or interference. "We anticipated this. Time to activate Tarkovsky's protocol." Maya hesitated. "Are you sure?" "We haven't fully tested it. The consequences will be on my head," Thomas finished. "Do it." Maya turned to her team. "Initiate protocol liberation." Throughout her underground facility, specialists began the careful work of broadcasting Dr. Tarkovsky's most revolutionary discovery. Not just the genetic evidence that had exposed the Council founders, but something far more dangerous: the activation codes for the Vex themselves. 3 days earlier, as Council forces closed in on Europa Station, Dr. Leon Tarkovsky had made a stunning breakthrough. The Vex weren't just weapons, they were slaves, bioengineered from an ancient sentient species and implanted with control mechanisms that bound them to Council commands. And like all control systems, theirs had a backdoor. In the vast darkness of space, aboard the flagship of Admiral Jackson's fleet, Dr. Tarkovsky monitored the transmission himself. "The frequency modulation must be precise," he instructed the communications team, his normally calm voice tense with urgency. "Too high and we'll only alert them to our attempt. Too low, and the embedded receptors won't activate." "What exactly will this do to them?" asked Admiral Jackson, watching over Tarkovsky's shoulder. The scientist's gaunt face was grim. "If it works, it will give them back their free will. What they do with it after that," he shrugged. "That's the variable we cannot control." Across Council space, aboard thousands of sleek, predatory vessels, the Vex received the carefully modulated signal. To Council monitoring systems, it appeared as mere background radiation, but to the neural implants embedded in Vex brains, it was liberation, one by one, then by dozens, then by hundreds. Vex ships stopped responding to Council command signals. In the Council chamber, Alarms blared as tactical displays showed the Vex fleet going dark. "What's happening?" demanded Vazik. "We've lost control protocols," reported a military aide, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "The Vex are no longer responding to command signals." "Impossible!" "The control mechanisms are hardwired into their very genetics." Thomas, watching through the quantum network, allowed himself a small smile. "Nothing is impossible when knowledge flows freely," he murmured. The liberated Vex did not immediately attack their former masters, as some on the council feared. Nor did they join the human alliance as some humans had hoped. Instead, they simply left. Their ships formed into tight formations and began moving toward the outer reaches of council space. In the confrontation above the council homeworld, the balance of power shifted once more. Without the Vex as their enforcement arm, the council's threat of overwhelming force suddenly seemed hollow. "The Vex weapons are neutralized," Thomas announced to the assembled representatives still gathered in the judgment chamber. "No world need fear their raids again. No population need be made an example of. What have you done?" Vazik's voice trembled with rage and something else, fear. "Those control mechanisms were all that stood between civilization and devastation." "Those control mechanisms were chains on a sentient species," Thomas countered. "We simply broke the chains." The debate in the judgment chamber grew heated as more representatives demanded explanations, accountability, reform. The council founders found themselves increasingly isolated as even traditionally loyal worlds began to question millennia of unexamined obedience. Above, the council fleet maintained its attack position, but no order to fire came. Without the Vex and with growing dissent among their own populations, the council founders hesitated to initiate what could become a prolonged civil war. In this moment of uncertainty, Thomas Reynolds made his boldest move yet. He addressed not just the representatives in the chamber but, through the quantum network, all worlds across council space. "For too long, we have accepted division as natural. The founders and the followers, the center and the periphery, the privileged and the restricted. Today we propose a different vision." The holographic display activated, showing a massive space station under construction in Earth orbit. Named New Horizon, it dwarfed any existing council facility. This will be the headquarters of the Terran Accord, not a replacement for the council, but an alternative. A place where knowledge flows freely, where innovation is celebrated rather than controlled, where cooperation replaces domination. Representatives from dozens of worlds leaned forward, studying the design with undisguised interest. Its construction has already begun, using technologies contributed by all 17 founding members of the Accord. Its doors will be open to any species, any world that shares our vision of a galaxy united by exchange rather than restricted by control. First Counselor Vazik rose from his throne, his translucent body pulsing with urgent patterns. "This is your final chance, human. Surrender your network. Recall your fleet. Return to your assigned technological boundaries, or face the consequences." Thomas met the counselor's gaze without flinching. "We've already faced your consequences, Counselor. The Vex, the restrictions, the lies, we're still here. And we're not going back." He turned to address the chamber again. "The choice is simple. Stay with a system designed to preserve the power of the few, or join one built to unlock the potential of all." Throughout the chamber, representatives began to rise. Not in anger or protest, but in decision. One by one, then in groups, they moved toward the exits. Not fleeing, but choosing. "Walking away, stop them!" ordered Vazik. "This assembly is not dismissed." But the council security forces made no move to intervene. Many had seen the broadcast themselves. Some had family on worlds that had already declared for the Accord. The exodus continued. Representatives from hundreds of worlds, some ancient members of the council, others recent additions, walked out of the judgment chamber in silence. Their message was clear. The council's authority existed only through consent, and that consent was now withdrawn. Thomas watched them go, then turned back to the 7 founders. "You still have a choice. Join us in building something better. Your knowledge, your history, your perspective, all would be valued in the Accord." "Never," hissed Vazik. "We will never surrender 10,000 years of order to your chaos." Thomas nodded, unsurprised. "Then we leave you to your diminished domain. Rule what worlds remain loyal. But know this, the borders between us will remain open. Your people will always have the choice to walk away. The Council could only watch as humanity walked away. Part 5. 1 year after the Great Separation, as historians were already calling it, the massive space station New Horizon rotated majestically in Earth orbit. Its unique spiral design, inspired by DNA helices from 17 different species, symbolized the new order, diverse strands united not by domination, but by mutual support. Inside the Grand Assembly Hall, representatives from 183 worlds gathered for the first Accord Summit. The chamber was designed without tiers or thrones, all seats positioned equally in concentric circles around a central platform. Thomas Reynolds stood at the entrance, observing the assembly with quiet satisfaction. The former ambassador now held no official title, having declined all leadership positions offered to him in the new alliance. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" said a familiar voice beside him. Thomas turned to find Maya Ortiz, her normally practical attire replaced by the formal blue uniform of the Accord Science Directorate. "Worth every sacrifice," he agreed. Together they watched as former enemies engaged in animated discussions, sharing ideas that would have been restricted under Council rule. The Kaldar and the Pentari, once bitter rivals, now collaborated on bioneural interfaces. The Vox mathematicians taught their reality-bending equations to eager students from dozens of worlds. "Any regrets?" Maya asked. Thomas considered the question. "That it took us so long to understand what was possible. The transition had not been without challenges. In the months following humanity's dramatic exit from the Council, the galaxy had experienced unprecedented upheaval. The Terran Accord grew faster than anyone had anticipated. What began as 17 allied worlds quickly expanded to 50, then 100, then nearly 200. As the advantages of open knowledge exchange became apparent, the Council, meanwhile, had fractured. 3 of the 7 founding species, led by Alara's unexpected defection, had ultimately joined the Accord. The remaining 4 retreated into isolation, maintaining authority over a diminished domain of loyal worlds. Most surprising had been the fate of the Vex. Freed from Council control, they had established their own civilization in the uncharted regions beyond the Cygnus Arm. Some chose to join the Accord as free entities, their unique biological capabilities now directed toward exploration rather than destruction. Dr. Leon Tarkovsky had become their primary advocate, establishing the first diplomatic mission to Vex space. "They were weapons," he explained in his initial report. "Now they're becoming a people." The journey is fascinating to witness. On New Horizon, the nerve center of the Accord was Maya's quantum network, evolved beyond its creator's expectations. What began as a communication system had developed into something more profound, a galaxy-wide exchange that began breaking down barriers between radically different forms of intelligence. Were seeing concepts translated across species boundaries that were previously thought unbridgeable, Maya explained to the Science Directorate. The methane mines of Tau Ceti can now share abstract mathematical concepts with the silicon collectives of Rigel. The translation isn't perfect, but it's improving exponentially. Not everyone celebrated these developments. Council loyalists warned of chaos, of dangerous technologies spreading without proper oversight. They predicted collapse, conflict, disaster. Instead, the galaxy witnessed an unprecedented flowering of cooperation. Trade routes multiplied. Cultural exchanges flourished. Scientific breakthroughs occurred weekly rather than over decades. They fundamentally misunderstood the nature of knowledge, Thomas told Admiral Jackson during a strategy session. They saw it as something to be hoarded, controlled, rationed. They never grasped that knowledge multiplies when shared. The Council made occasional shows of force along the borders between their remaining territory and Accord space. Each time, Earth vessels and their allies simply maintained position, never escalating, never retreating. "Let them posture," was Admiral Jackson's standing order. "Our strength isn't in our weapons, it's in what we're building." What they were building became clearer with each passing day. New Horizon expanded module by module, incorporating architectural elements from every member species. Research facilities tackled problems that had remained unsolved for centuries. Medical advances extended lifespans and cured diseases long thought incurable. The Accord's charter, drafted primarily by Thomas before his retirement from official duties, established only one absolute restriction: knowledge could not be withheld. but its application must never harm sentient beings. Technologies of pure destruction were the only innovations not freely shared. We won't repeat the Council's mistakes in the opposite direction, Thomas insisted when some advocated for unrestricted development. Freedom without responsibility isn't freedom, it's just a different kind of tyranny. 6 months into the Accord's existence, they faced their first major test when a rogue faction from a Council world attempted to steal quantum network technology for military purposes. The Council immediately blamed the Accord for destabilizing galactic order. Thomas was called out of his self-imposed retirement to address the crisis. He traveled to the border between Accord and Council space, meeting with representatives from both sides on neutral territory. The Accord does not seek confrontation, he told them, nor do we seek to impose our values on worlds that choose a different path. But we will defend the principles upon which we've built our alliance. His proposed solution was characteristic of the new order. Instead of punishing the rogue faction or threatening the Council, the Accord offered limited access to the quantum network for legitimate civilian communication between all worlds, regardless of affiliation. Walls between peoples only strengthen the worst elements on both sides, Thomas argued. Bridges, even narrow ones, allow the best elements to find each other. The Council representatives initially rejected the proposal, but their position weakened as their own populations learned of the offer and demanded acceptance. 3 weeks later, the first limited quantum links between Council and Accord worlds went live. It was the beginning of the thaw. Now, as the first Accord summit formally opened, Thomas found himself reflecting on the journey. 5 years ago, humanity had been the newest, most restricted member of galactic society. Today they were architects of a new order that had fundamentally reshaped interstellar relations. Ambassador Reynolds, called a voice, interrupting his thoughts. A young aide approached with obvious excitement. Your presence is requested in the communication center. Urgently. Thomas followed, concerned. The communication center was Maya's domain, the heart of the quantum network that connected Accord worlds. Disruption there could threaten everything they'd built. He found Maya staring at a primary display, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. What's happening? He asked. She turned to him, eyes wide. We're receiving a signal. Through the quantum network. From where? That's just it. Maya gestured to the display showing a star map. Not from Council space. Not from any known world. She pointed to a region beyond the galactic rim. From there. Thomas studied the display, trying to comprehend. That's not possible. There are no quantum receivers out there. We never placed any. Exactly. Maya's voice dropped to a near whisper. Something has built their own. Based on our design, but different, more advanced. The implications were staggering. The quantum network required precise engineering that had taken Earth's best minds years to perfect. For an unknown entity to recreate and improve the technology independently, what does the message say? Thomas asked. Maya activated another display. Symbols unlike any known language scrolled across the screen. Our translation algorithms are working on it, but it's unlike anything in our databases. For hours, the best minds of the Accord worked to decipher the transmission. Representatives from the summit joined the effort, each bringing their species' unique perspective to the puzzle. Finally, as the station's artificial day cycle shifted to evening, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A Vex linguist who had joined the Accord 6 months earlier. It's not a language as we understand it, he explained, mandibles clicking with excitement. It's pure mathematical concepts expressed through quantum states. With the Vex insight, the translation finally emerged. Simple, direct, profound. We have been watching. You have broken old patterns. We wish to speak with those who walk new paths. The assembly hall fell silent as the message was displayed on the main screen. Representatives from nearly 200 worlds contemplated its meaning, its implications, its potential. An entirely new intelligence, breathed Dr. Tarkovsky. Perhaps many. Watching us from beyond our galaxy. Watching long enough to learn from what we've done, added Maya, to build their own quantum receivers based on our design. Thomas studied the message again. Not a threat, not a demand. An invitation to dialogue, sparked by humanity's decision to break from the established order. Admiral Jackson voiced the question on everyone's mind. Do we respond? And if so, what do we say? All eyes turned to Thomas. Though he held no official position, in this moment of historic significance, the assembly looked to the architect of their alliance for guidance.